Hey, what's going on, guys? I want to do a review on some new pens. If you remember, I had reviewed this Smith & Wesson pen, and I was talking about tactical pens and how some of them are hokey and some of them actually work really well. And I came across these pens from Schrade. Now, I'm going to roll in a couple video clips from when I was camping with Christina. She's here sitting next to me, and we're kind of talking about this pen. I figured it would be time to do a review on it. Now, I want to show you, I saved the box. I never save boxes, but I saved this one just to show you how they come. On the back, we'll have the specific model number, and it'll also show you, which color it is, because they do come in 4 different colors. That's why I have the other ones here to show you as well. But this one happens to be the black one. That's from the one I tested. And this is really interesting. A lot of these pens, these tactical pens, for the most part, most of them are some kind of impact device. Whether it comes to a wider cone or maybe some kind of knurling on the end or something, or like this, in this case, it comes to a very fine point, and it's just basically, meant for impact. These ones are kind of like survival ones, which I really like. The throw is kind of cool, it's interesting, that's why I wanted to try them. So I'm gonna put that one off to the side. This is the one I tested. I did have some issues. I love the design, but we're gonna talk about in a minute some of the problems that we had when we were trying to use this for fire starting. And we'll talk about exactly why I think it did have problems. But first off, obviously, there's black. Black's probably gonna be the most popular. But they also have a kind of deep brown bronze color. And this one's Christina's. And also the orange one's Christina's. There's a really vibrant, like, I don't know, like a Gatorade type of orange, would you say?
Gatorade, yeah.
I don't know, it's kind of stupid compared. Yeah, it's like, I don't know, it's metallic-y. I don't know how well the camera picks up this particular color, but it actually, you can see it next to the brown. It's definitely orange. And then this one is just a kind of gunmetal gray.
A little bluish.
Yeah, it's got a little blue tint in it, but next to the black. On it by itself, it's hard to tell. That's why I want to put all these together to show you the differences in colors. So hopefully you can kind of tell, straight black, kind of a coppery brown, a bright orange, and a nice gunmetal gray. So these will go off to the side. And I just want to talk about this one because it's one we tested. Now the first thing, we have the pen. So the pen cap unscrews, it does screw on. And you can see it has a pocket clip. The pocket clip held very nicely. I put this on my bag, not my actual pocket, but they clipped the material on my max position bag very nicely, and it held in place. Of course, the pocket clip has the Schrade logo on it, so you may or may not like that, but that's what that is. The first tool in this is the cap, has a cut in it. You can tell, but this is a whistle. And while the pen is assembled together, it still does whistle, but not quite as loud as when it's off. So this is what it sounds like when the pen's assembled together. It's kind of flat, right? It's not super loud. It does whistle, but it's not very effective. Of course, when you take it off, that's when the air is going to be able to come out a little bit better, and is a pretty decently loud whistle. So, would you say it's, compared to other whistles, it's pretty damn loud. So anyway, so the cap is a whistle, which is really nice. Of course, there's many different reasons you may want to whistle. Maybe if you're being attacked or something, you can draw attention to yourself. If you're lost somewhere, you can draw attention to yourself. And also could scare off some animals, potential predatory animals. So that's pretty cool. And of course, we have our actual pen. Now, when you put the cap on the back here, it does screw on, which is very nice. This is something that this pen does not do, although it kind of pressure fits on because of the fact that this gradually gets fatter. So when you push the Smith & Wesson one on, you can poke it on there and it's not going to fall very easily, but it doesn't actually have threads where it's not going to screw on. And a lot of these pens don't do that either, so you're kind of stuck with the cap separate. You don't really know what to do with it. Some Fisher Space pens, which are really nice pens, don't have this option where you can actually just screw it back on. So I do like that. That's a nice feature. And then the pen itself writes very nicely. I'll show you the inserts here. It's not a Fisher Space Pen insert, but very simple design. Of course, it's our spring. And here is the pen insert. It's kind of unusual. It's not going to be a standard insert here, and you'll see why. But this one says, here, look, mini stat. And looks like it's Swiss made. So a little interesting pen insert. It doesn't go in all the way. It's not a standard insert because they needed the body for the other tools. And let me grab that spring to put this back together. And you'll see what else is in here, which actually is the reason why I like these the most. The whistle's kind of cool. That's just a bonus. The real reason why I got this one is because there is a fire starting device a ferro rod. And by the way, there is an O-ring here. All right, so when you start tightening this down, you can feel it seal up, so it will be waterproof. And it's a nice snug seal. Now on the tip here, there's two things you do. When you unscrew the body right at this point, this is where you have your ferrocerium rod. And this one of the issues we had, and I'm going to show you the footage right now as I'm talking. As I'm striking this, the ferro rod came out. It started to loosen up very easily. I mean, talking about the actual ferro rod itself inside the little brass fitting, that had loosened up and eventually fell out. I did use this a lot, and I'll do a separate video on this, but the tinder that we were trying to light was extremely wet. So we did use this quite a bit, more than you would commonly. So anyway, as you can see here, this piece unscrews, which is nice. The ferro rod is actually going to be mounted or glued into a little brass piece. So the good news is that this is replaceable. You can replace this with a new one, which Schrade is going to do. But this actually came out of the brass. So that's not supposed to happen. While I was using it, it was much looser. And of course, as I'm starting to strike it, it would literally fall out, which was not good. So it was rendered unusable. Right, and it was very frustrating because we were trying to make a fire. I mean, I was trying to do it with all this wet kindling to prove a point, and that'll be for a separate video. But yeah, it was disappointing to say the least. But as far as this striking, it did strike very nicely. What I like about the striker, it's in the tip here, and you can see the threading started to mar up a little bit, which is not good. However, it still works, it's still functional. It just, because of that, it started getting loose as well. Now this actually screws the opposite way. This screws clockwise as opposed to counterclockwise. And same thing when you're putting it in the top. So this reverses, and this is going to be our striker, which is nice. So when you first put this, took it apart, everything was nice and tight, and it worked fantastic. But after a lot of use, the threading started to loosen up a little bit, and I got a little bit of wiggle. I'm going to show you that right now in the footage as well. Just showing the parts kind of wiggling a little bit. Still very functional, just not as tight as when I first used it. But again, keep in mind that I was using this excessively, much more than most people would use it. But it should be noted that if you were in a dire situation where you had to use this over and over and over again, it may get loose on you. So the striking was actually very good. I'll show you one real quick here. I have to brace the back of the rod.
Can you talk about the fact that it's not normal ferro? It doesn't throw normal sparks.
Yeah, this does also. It's kind of like some of the mesh metal out there, where the ferro, when it drops sparks, it keeps rolling. It basically stays lit longer, and it also lights a little bit hotter. So here's a fresh one. And obviously I want to scrape off some of the black before I start actually lighting this.
There you go.
You can see how this, I'm barely touching this right now. Really just was trying to scrape off the coating. But if I were to put a little more pressure on this, you can see how they're kind of rolling down the table. So it stays lit longer. And it also, see, I started to catch the threads there on accident. Yeah. Seems like it burns a little bit hotter. Yeah. It does actually throw off a lot of sparks. You won't get one. Yeah. So I think it's a little bit superior to a lot of different ferro rods out there. Yeah. That's okay. Although it is small, it's still effective. And if you're using this normally, if you were to take the proper tinder out, dry tinder, unlike we were doing, but we were kind of testing out to see if we can get something going in really wet conditions. But under the proper conditions, this does work very nicely. Of course, I wouldn't recommend this to be your primary source of fire anyway. This is something along the lines of just for emergency purposes, to have a backup to a backup. Backup to it, yeah. Yeah, exactly. But still very, very effective. The one thing I did notice, and you'll see this in the video as well, you see how these are rolling way over the table. Yeah. In fact, I'm going to stop because I have a shag carpet underneath here. I don't want to start a fire in the house. What was he going to say? I don't know. I forgot what I was going to say. Anyway, it's an effective tool. I just wouldn't trust this to be my primary source of starting a fire. I was impressed with the idea. The concept is awesome. The execution is still well done. It's just not perfected, and I would not trust my life on it, of course. I would have this as a backup to an actual ferrocerium rod, or if you can get the mesh metal sticks, a nice long one, be much better off. But I still think it's a really cool pen as far as the tactical pens go. It is one of the coolest, of course.
Yeah, you could have an, another ferro rod and actually use their striker because it's a good striker.
That's true. Well, that's another good point. Even if you weren't going to use the striker on here because you didn't feel safe with it, I know a lot of you guys out there will sacrifice your edges of your blades, which please, for the love of God, do not do that. If the spine of your blade is like on 90 degree, actually I should have grabbed the knife to show you this, but if the spine of your blade is not sharp enough for striking, and you do have to use the blade, just use the very, very bottom of it. But ideally, if you have this, you can just use the striker. You don't have to use the ferro rod, like Christine was saying. You can just take the striker off. And if you're just using this, you basically have the whole pen as a handle anyway. So you can use this as your striker for your regular ferro rod, as opposed to some of the cheap, crappy saw blades they give you. The saw blades, I find, actually chew up the ferro rod, and it leaves a very rough surface, so I would use a flat edge. And Christina just pulled this out of her EDC bag. Show me that bag.
No,
let's see it. Come on, put that in front of the camera. Everyone's waiting. We'll talk. We might make a video on this later, might not, but just want to show you this real quick. She's got a really cool Max Edition bag she uses all the time for EDC. I'm making her. I'm not making her make videos, but she's a little shy. Anyway, she's got some cool crap. So here's her regular ferro rod, and again, you can use this as a striker, and it works very effectively.
First time, yeah.
So there you go. Thank you very much. So yeah, even if if you didn't feel safe with the ferro rod in this particular kit, if nothing else, you have a great striker on you all the time, so you don't have to damage your knife blades, because that is not cool. So the one thing that was weird, you can see I unscrewed the pen. I'm not used to unscrewing or screwing something the opposite way that I'm used to, so it seemed a little weird. Something else to note is that these threads are exposed. Not maybe necessarily the best design, maybe a little cap on top of here, although of course it costs more money. A little cap would be better to protect those threads so they don't get bumped into things and could mar up, because if these were to fold in, you wouldn't be able to put that little nib on top back into the pen securely. As you can see, this one did get marred up, as I showed before. So assuming that maybe you dropped your pen or something banged into it, if these threads had bent enough, it would be unable to be put back in here, and it'd be much more difficult to strike with that, although you could use it still. So overall, I have to say the design is fantastic. It works adequately under normal situations, but not something you can completely rely on. This again would be a backup to a backup to a backup. But it's a very cool pen to have. If nothing else, the whistle works great. You can use the striker. So that's pretty much it. That is the Schrade kind of survival pen here. I like it over a lot of different pens. I mean, it depends on what you're using it for. I know a lot of you guys out there do still like the wilderness survival type stuff. So it's definitely a cool option. As far as price, I saw these on Amazon for $23.61. You could find them, of course, all over the place, all over the internet. As opposed to a lot of the pens out there, you're going to pay anywhere from $15 to $30 anyway. It's a little bit more expensive than a lot of the models, but you do get, the ferrocene rod and the whistle and everything else. So I think it's still adequate, for what you're getting. It's the price to be expected to be paid. So that's pretty much it. Anything to add? What do you think watching me try to light wet tinder for half an hour with this?
Held up for a while, but eventually it.
Yeah, I mean, it's discouraging when the pieces start falling apart on you. I mean, that sucks, but in the end, it still did work until I chose to not use it. So it was still throwing sparks like it should have. So that's it. That's my review. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Thank you very much for watching. I thank you for your time, as always. And I thank Christina for being patient with me sitting here doing video stuff today. She is perfect. All right. Have a great day, guys. Take care.